Good afternoon. This is the second session in breakout room B, right? A. Sorry. So my name is Erik Barentsen. I'm a Senior Policy Officer at the Dutch Data Center Association. I will moderate this session for you today. The previous session was all about building and construction. Today we are, in this half hour, we're going to discuss a little bit more in detail about the technology and the recycle and the sustainability and the life cycle and circularity of the IT equipment and other equipment used in the data centers. And I've invited 3 colleagues, so please take your seat. And grab a microphone. So, yeah, like I said, a little bit discussion in more detail about the product life cycle assessment of the technology, IT technology, but also the facilitator technology used in data centers. So not so much about the construction, but more what can data centers and the industry itself do to improve the life cycle assessment and the circularity of all the equipment that we use and that our customers actually use in our data centers. 3 invitees from Sims Lifecycle, Legrand and EdgeConnex. And perhaps you can all introduce yourself quickly and introduce your company a little bit and your own position. Is that okay? Yeah, please.
Welcome everybody, good to be here. I'm Willem Huiskes from Sims Lifecycle Services. We provide services to our clients, data centers, to take back their end-of-life equipment, IT equipment, data sanitize that, take it back to our circular centers and refurbish and remarket that in the secondary market. We do that on a global basis. Our clients are global, hyperscalers, co-locators, enterprise data centers. And we also sell that again in the secondary market on a global basis. Okay. Our purpose is create a world without waste to preserve our planet. And yeah, I think that's the reason why we're here. We would like to recycle, reuse as much as possible. Yeah, that's also a reason why we've launched our carbon calculator in the last fall, and where we calculate the carbon avoidance which can be made from reusing and recycling IT equipment from data centers using LCAs.
Okay, great.
That's in short, I think.
Thank you very much. Nice and short. We only have 30 minutes, so. So, Steven, perhaps you can introduce yourself.
I'm Steven Sprokholt. I'm a senior director at EdgeConnex. I've worked with EdgeConnex for over 6 years now. When they took the step across the pond from Herndon, Virginia, I was one of the first to be part of the team. So that was a great honor, and still is, of course. So for us as EdgeConnex, one of the important things is to become a climate neutral data center provider in 2030. As of this decade, we are now taking more and more active steps and are accelerating the program to get there. For all of us and also our suppliers and vendors, and customers, it's a complete learning curve to see what actually all needs to be done. I think when I started EdgeConnex in 2016, what the discussions were how to save the climate, how to save the globe. And the discussions that we have now, then we are certainly much further ahead than back then. And we also see much more scope that is to be implemented. And that's also the topic of today's discussion. Scope 3 emissions, the, I think, least intangible part of circularity, sustainability that we have. I give it to Ralf.
Ralf.
Okay, thanks, Steven. My name is Ralf Ploenes. I'm from Legrand Data Center Solutions. I came to Legrand through the acquisition of Raritan some 5 years ago. Legrand is a provider of digital and electrical building infrastructures in the residential space. We're owning companies like Netatmo, you know the thermostats. But I'm from the data center side, so that's the commercial building aspect. We help our customers to reduce their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. That's been our business for the last 10 years since Legrand has been looking at the data center business. We've got a very strong corporate social responsibility roadmap that details very finely what steps we are taking to do that ourselves too, and we share that publicly. Last year we've achieved 131% of our CSR roadmap for 2021. So when I say traditionally we help our customers reduce the Scope 1 and Scope 2, 10 years ago, that was reducing our customers' total cost of ownership, or OPEX, basically. We helped them to reduce the energy consumption through allowing them monitoring their equipment with our technology. Secondly, we helped them by giving them technology that was more energy efficient than what they used before through. For example, I'm from the PDU business, IPDU business. We used special relays that have a lot less energy consumption, bistable relays. We focused very strongly on the containment topic. We were one of the early providers through our Minkels brand of high performance containment to separate cold and hot air. So many aspects to help our customers reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2. But our Scope 1 and Scope 2 is your Scope 3. So that's the beauty of that discussion. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the introduction. So you've mentioned some words like the Scope 3 discussion. When we talk about energy efficiency of data centers, we often talk about PUE, which seems to be the most commonly used factor. But I would like to take the discussion much further, indeed, into Scope 3. So my first question to EdgeConnex is like, what do you actually do? I mean, it's a great word, right? We look at Scope 3, but what could you give some practical examples? For instance, how do you handle the equipment yourself? How do you perhaps motivate your customers to handle their equipment differently? So, Steven, could you comment on that?
Yeah, those are a lot of questions in one single.
I know.
A single question.
We get 5 minutes.
I'll try to cover them all. So, I think the most important thing with Scope 3 emissions is that you first need to assess what they actually are. And for us, that was an eye-opener. In 2020, we asked a company, a consultancy firm, to help us with, so what are our Scope 3 emissions? Because we always thought, hey, well, that's maybe a minor thing in our data center operations. Mm-hmm. And suddenly we came to the conclusion that the Scope 3 emissions in building new data centers, so the embedded carbon in the products and services, so the products such as relays, such as MV equipment, is actually larger than the already carbon compensated footprint of the diesel that we use during the monthly tests of our generators, as well as the kilowatt hours that our customers use. So that was definitely an eye-opener for us. So, and when you have those numbers, those figures, and also the insight in where are these Scope 3 emissions, are they in CapEx goods, are they in commuting, where are they located, then you can create plans to modify it. So one step that we have taken is in our own sustainability policy that everybody has to acknowledge day 1, January 1st, well, or maybe January 3rd if it's
Sunday, right?
If there's a Monday or whatever in between, is that everybody now in decision making has to be acknowledged about not only the financial performance of an investment decision or a new data center project or whatever, but also needs to implement the consideration of, so what's the carbon? Is it the most carbon friendly investment decision? But also from an ESG perspective, are there detrimental social impacts of that decision? And what can we do to mitigate these effects? Or are there different alternatives here? So that's now how we are implementing it in a front end. So that's a lot there at engineering, a lot at the board level of making the actual decisions, finding the alternatives. Then we also have a track with operations. Our operations teams have QBRs, quarterly business reviews with all major vendors. And there we have the discussion. So, okay, what can you do for us with our existing equipment? How we can improve? Are there things that we can do with operational settings? How can we play How can we play these systems that they perform better over their entire lifetime? And these discussions also help when we have these vendors bidding for new products. A thing that we're also challenging them with is, could you please tell us when we buy this beautiful piece of equipment, how much embedded carbon we have in that piece of equipment? That's still something that's very difficult, and we acknowledge it ourselves because we've went through that process for ourselves. But we hope we can get there in the next year or two. And at the same time, we also have our customers, because our scope 1 and 2 are their scope 3. So we also discuss with them, so how can we reduce those footprints by server settings, that even though the servers are not ours in general, we talk to them, how can we make sure that they use the best favorable settings? What can we do can we increase or can we change the boundaries of the SLA? So by increasing the temperature there, we can increase the level of free cooling that we can do throughout the year. How can we play these systems? Because it is a team effort. We can't just say, hey, Willem, fix it for us, or hey, Ralf, fix it, because hey, it's your equipment. No, it's something that we need to do as teamwork. So our customers, our vendors, everybody needs to work together in this.
Okay, that's an elaborate answer. Thank you, but it was an elaborate question. No, great. So we come back to that because that's actually a very interesting discussion, right? So the data, it's not your responsibility, but you do take ownership of at least starting the discussion.
At the very least, it should be coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
So it should be, we see things in our systems, we can see what the draw is. So we can also provide the customer with feedback, even though they can actually see what their equipment is. But we at least can give them feedback. What do we see from a day-to-day basis in our data center? What happens?
Great. Okay. Which brings me to Legrand. Obviously, already your statement, like our scope 1 and 2 is EdgeConnex scope 3. So could you give us an example of how this would actually work? Do you have these quarterly reviews? Is that already something that you have embedded in your sales force or sales system already?
That's where the challenge lies. We've got salespeople.
Yeah.
So they are not necessarily looking at alternative forms of ownership. Yeah. So pay-per-use models they're not familiar with. They're having discussions on technology and getting the best solution for a given problem, but not necessarily ownership topics, financial topics. So I was just picking up on the point that you said salespeople. No, but we are not having these discussions. That's
seems like an invite. Yeah.
That's a very good starting point. We have done a lot of things to get discussions going or provide data to have these discussions on an educated level. We've recently joined the SDIA, the Sustainable Digital Infrastructure Alliance, to find like-minded organizations in the value chain to have more of these discussions. That's a very welcome approach, I have to say. But what can we specifically do to help you to achieve that goal? One is, I just mentioned alternative ownership models, XaaS models, everything as a service. That gives us the opportunity to take things back, to update them, to change the product for a more efficient one, which also then gets the product back to us, which allows us to put it into a good recycling or reuse scheme. So alternative ownership models. When we got acquired by Legrand, I said I'm from Raritan and we got acquired by Legrand. Legrand, the first task we got was you have to have PEPs, product environmental profiles for our products. So we created these profiles and nobody's really asked for them. It's not recently that people said, can we have an open data hub that lists these product environmental profiles? But we had them for quite a while. And I don't think they have been used much. They say a lot about the product, how it impacts the environment. All the questions that your purchasing department would ask, they're actually answered in these PEPs. So that, to make a long story short, there's a lot we can do together, but it really raises the need for us having that conversation. And our products, the first intelligent PDUs, for example, went into use 10 years ago, they are coming into to a point now where people would probably decommission them. And that raises the topic of recycling these products. And that's probably something for us to have a discussion about. How could we recycle those products that weren't necessarily built with recycling in mind 10 years ago? Today, that's different. Yeah. We are designing our products in a much different way due to our CSR roadmap that has such a strong influence. But it's really down to communication in the value chain.
Okay, thank you very much. So interesting to hear that actually from a vendor point of view, most of this product lifecycle assessment information is already in the system, but we are just starting to use that as a data center industry. Okay, well that's an important remark, I think, and should all make us aware that we should start using that kind of information. So question to Sims is obviously, you know, you're big in IT recycling. And you know, there are a lot of servers in data centers, we all know that obviously, but could you give us an idea of where we are today in this process? Is it already commonly used, or is it still a one-off, and do you have any percentages? And
yes, well, first of all, Ralf's statement of saying we have to talk to each other, that would have been my end statement. To say,
okay.
you know, that's important, but it's good we've already passed that, and positive. And yeah, where are we? I think I'm an optimistic guy. I am also, I also tell the truth. The truth is that we're not so far yet. I mean, if I hear Steven, I think he's asking all the right questions. It's really Scope 1 and 2, that's what we've been spending a lot of time on. Maybe 90% of the time has been spent on Scope 1 and 2, while 95% of the gain is in Scope 3. And I think that's really important to state out. And Uptime last year had a survey where they asked how much of you, to data centers, how much of you are looking at reuse or e-waste within your sustainability metrics. There was only 25%. So that's why I'm not super happy yet, but I'm optimistic because we have a long way to win, especially when I hear these kind of things from Steven. I think that's really positive. But I think, yeah, it needs kind of a shift in mind. And first part is getting the metrics. So how much are we actually saving? So it's very important to focus on it, to put it forward within your industry, within your company. But more important is to start with a metric, because then you can start measuring. I think you already said that. And it's not a new phenomenon, but it is very important. And that's one reason why we've put forward that carbon avoidance calculator for data center material, IT material. And I think you also answered the question, or you asked the question, when we buy something, what should we buy on a carbon way? And I think there are in the industry quite some examples as well, like Sadassi. I'm not sure if you know them, but they're making applications to give you that answer. And we all know that for our carbon avoidance calculator, we're using LCAs. LCAs are not perfect. We all know that as well, but I think we should really start working with that, collaborating in the market to get that even better. I'm not sure if it will be perfect ever, but start measuring, start calculating it, and at that point, I think we can move forward. And I've just heard you say it as well. A co-locator often say, "It's not my equipment."
True. Yeah.
I find that too easy. At this point, if you would have said that 6 years ago, I would say, okay, you know, maybe you have bigger fish to fry and you need the cost to go down. But at this point, and I know it's not their part, but they can facilitate it. And I think facilitate is even a better word. I think they should facilitate it. We are currently having a big partnership with CBRE. Since last year, and they are really facilitating that possibility to reuse and recycle equipment.
Okay.
And that's important. And one last thing, I think only 36% in the data center market is buying, 36% is buying only new equipment. So the idea of buying reused equipment is also still has a long way to go. And it doesn't mean you have to buy the whole asset. You can also take parts which has been rebuilt from used assets and make a new model out of that.
Okay, yeah, we don't have a server manufacturer at the table at the moment.
Would be nice.
That would be nice for the next one. But do you believe that the server industry itself could also improve itself in building more sustainable and perhaps more modular equipment?
I think I'm not telling anything new if I say that the larger hyperscales are doing it themselves because they don't have to buy anything off the shelf. Which is of course nice for them. They have the investments to like an OCP project.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they can, and I think they will have to be, and they will have to. And I think we go back to where we were in the last panel discussion. It's the client who, in the end, will state how it needs to be built, or what it expects on a sustainability level. It's about performance and costs. I understand that. I'm not stupid, but yeah, if they really have if they really ask the right questions, they also should look at the sustainability part. And I think from an OCP, which has a lot of experience, but there are other projects as well. I think that can be learned a lot from them.
Okay. Ralf, is there something you would like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to give an example. I mean, customers, and that's the customers of the colo predominantly, or probably even the colo, needs to prepare to leave established thinking patterns, the paradigms, established paradigms. I've just one example. We've been floating around the idea, cabinets traditionally have been black, and we raised the question, why do they have to be black? And somebody came up with the idea they could be white, it's probably better for the light, so they made it white. Nobody came up with the idea not to powder coat cabinets, which would make it easier for recycling again, yeah? But is that something that customers are prepared to discuss? Yeah, they publish tenders that cabinets have to be powder coated, then you come with an attractive offer for all the good reasons that they are not powder coated, and there's not really a disadvantage. But we fear, and in these few discussions that we had, they were very short discussions. Yeah, so we have to be open to new ways of thinking and looking at and OCP is a good example. Yeah, they do not powder coat many of their equipment pieces. So, yeah.
Although we are a very innovative industry, perhaps we should be more forward-thinking even. Okay.
I think an interesting thing could be is that we see now still data centers being built as a classical, logistics building with some cooling equipment on the roof.
Big box.
It's all still, yeah. In that respect, the design hasn't evolved over the last couple of decades. But what you see now, especially here in the region of Amsterdam, and Erik, you're very, very familiar with the topic, with increased sustainability requirements from the municipality, also taking into account the carbon emissions from the steel and concrete, is the move forward to using CLT, cross-laminated timber, for construction. So actually create a wooden data center. That is still, I mean, like you said, so who will accept a non-powder coated rack? I mean, I think it is time that we have these discussions in what can we change, think outside of the box, take a helicopter view, and then it can still be, the answer could still be no, that we are forgetting something, that we're not seeing something, that's fine. But at least we need to have these discussions. From these discussions, you can get innovation and new other ideas, because it's smart people sitting in a room together. And then we can bring the industry forward. Going right now, like, just keep building logistics warehouses a little bit smarter each and every time. Then 2030 is very, very, very close by. Yeah,
we should keep that in mind, and also the time. So thank you for that. It's very, not many of you, well, half of you probably was at the previous session as well, and there was also a comment about no silo thinking, right? We need to do this as a chain, as a supply chain, and that was from a construction point of view. But I hear actually a very similar conclusion actually of the equipment used in data centers as well. So that's an interesting, I would say, summary. We have 5 minutes left, so are there any questions from the audience at this moment? I do have a microphone, if it's switched on. Hello? That's
Thank you.
Is it switched on?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's a really difficult subject to speak to, really. And the industry some 20 years ago, the data centers, it was a minuscule amount of power or carbon or concern around it, so it didn't really make much of a difference. And we're heading towards a point where in 2 or 3 years' time, data centers will consume about a fifth of the world's power. And that's notwithstanding the carbon concerns around, construction, everything that relates to it. My question is that taking account of the aggressive targets that some very significant countries have put to carbon neutrality or positive carbon attitude, and I've been in the data center industry for probably 20 years, my concern is that there's a misalignment between where we are, and that's mostly, actually, Stephen, you raised the point, it's mostly around what our clients are asking us to do in that data center in terms of power and equipment and capability, and how that doesn't align with the reach for carbon neutrality. And I think that it'd be really interesting to see a pathway or some kind of graph that shows how we're going to get there at the same kind of time as how the G7 is going to get there and their obligations. And I think that is the really big challenge for all of us.
Okay. It's not my prepared question, so anyone you want like...
I think I can answer part of the question. So in the Netherlands, we have an organization called NVDA, which is the Federation for Sustainable Energy. And I think even them, they are not, Olaf van der Graag, he's not necessarily against data centers, because these data centers, they are a huge partner for these new renewable assets that are being built. Because these data centers, they have contracts for 15 years, and they are able to also commit to a certain electricity price for 15 years and are able to leverage that PPA. So I think here, data centers are also part of the solution in accelerating the growth of renewables in the market. So I think that's a part of your answer.
Okay. I'm not sure who was first. Well, I will go just with the person who's most nearby.
I have a question for Ralf. Ralf, are you preparing for the impact of the European Green Deal with carbon border taxes coming our way when it comes to your manufacturing geographies?
Are we preparing? Absolutely. We do that at corporate level, and that gets filtered down to all the business units. And for us, as a data center business unit, that has a lot of interest from the group's steering committees. So I can't say what specifically we are doing at the moment, but I'm very sure. I mean, it is a must-do within Legrand to look at future directions and legislations and regulations and be in compliance with that.
Hello.
Last question.
Willem, I heard you say something about more specific recycling. What do you think the role of predictive maintenance and AI can play in this?
Good question. I think maintenance is important. I mean, if you, we've heard, I think in the last panel as well, if you have a 3-year-old server and you can do some repair and maintenance and it can run again for several years, that is perfect. It could be in the same company, it could be in a different company. I think that's not that doesn't matter. A matter of less logistics, you can say, have it in the same data center. AI is off my topic. I think AI can be. I think you would probably have a better answer for that. But yeah, I'm not sure how you would see that. But is that in a manufacturing or reusing way, or what do you mean with AI in that case? Can you specify it a little bit?
It's more specific repairs and
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You mean in terms of predictive maintenance and so on? Yeah. There have been a lot of programs already 5 years ago by big IT service providers to push that topic. But again, I don't think anything has been finalized to the effect where I would say this would have huge impact. But experiments have taken place and are currently taking place. So I expect something to come out of that. So yeah, I see a lot of scope for use of AI in predictive maintenance and predictive replacement programs.
I think in general, AI is playing a big an important part in data centers. But I think
they're a huge customer.
Yeah. Also, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Our time is up. I would like to thank the panel. And,